The engagement ring rested in my palm while everyone around me clapped. Not because I had proposed. Not because we were starting our future. They were clapping because Emily had just delayed our wedding in front of everyone we loved. My career has reached a point where I can't slow down, she told the room with a confident smile. Some dreams matter more right now. I know everyone understands. The applause echoed across the restaurant. Glasses touched. People smiled. I stood there with my hand inside my pocket, my fingers wrapped around the same ring I had once slipped onto hers. Nobody noticed that I wasn't smiling. That moment should have shocked me. Instead, it felt like the ending of a story that had been falling apart for months. 2 years earlier, that same ring had been the happiest thing I had ever owned. I'd skipped vacations, worked extra weekend shifts, sold my old motorcycle. Every dollar went into a small wooden box hidden in the back of my closet. The night I finally proposed, the city lights reflected across the river like tiny stars. Emily laughed before I even opened the ring box. You've been nervous all day. I've had a reason. My hand shook so badly that I almost dropped the ring. She covered her mouth. Oh my God, I don't have a mansion. I don't have millions. My voice cracked. But I'll spend every day making sure you never question how much you're loved. Tears rolled down her face. Yes. Before I could finish breathing, she wrapped both arms around me. I've been waiting forever to hear that. Nothing in my life had ever felt so certain. The first few months were everything I had imagined. We searched for apartments, argued over paint colors, laughed about baby names we weren't ready to use. Every conversation ended with our future. Then little things started changing. Emily received a promotion. I celebrated harder than she did. You earned this. She kissed my cheek while checking another email. I'll make it up to you this weekend. That weekend became next weekend. Then next month. Eventually those promises stopped having dates. Ryan Foster entered our lives around the same time. Successful, confident, the kind of man who walked into every room as if he already owned it. Emily admired him. He believes I could become a regional director before 30. That's amazing. He says I shouldn't limit myself. I smiled because I loved seeing her excited. At least that's what I told myself. Soon, every conversation included Ryan. Ryan thinks this project could change everything. Ryan invited the executive team to dinner. Ryan says I should focus completely on work this year. Sometimes I wondered if my own name still mattered inside our apartment. One evening, I cooked her favorite pasta. Candles waited on the table. The food stayed warm for nearly an hour. Then, too, my phone lit up. Running late. Don't wait for me. I stared at the message. The candles burned lower. The pasta turned cold. By midnight, the apartment felt bigger than it had ever been. She slipped inside quietly. You stayed awake? I wanted us to eat together. Her eyes landed on the cold dinner. Gabe, I'm exhausted. I know. She disappeared into the bedroom. The plates stayed exactly where I had placed them. The next morning, I threw everything into the trash. My birthday arrived 3 weeks later. Emily promised dinner. I already cleared my schedule. You don't have to if work gets busy. She laughed. I'll be there. 6 o'clock came. Then 7. I think my phone buzzed. Emergency meeting. I'm so sorry. We'll celebrate tomorrow. Red heart. Tomorrow became another forgotten promise. I cut my own birthday cake. 1 slice. 1 candle. 1 chair. The television stayed on because the apartment felt too quiet without another voice. Daniel visited a few days later. He looked around the apartment before noticing 3 unopened birthday gifts on the table. She missed it. I forced a smile. Work. He crossed his arms. Everything is work. It's temporary. You've been saying that for almost a year. I laughed, though nothing felt funny. Love needs patience. Daniel stared at me for a long moment. No. His voice stayed calm. Love needs 2 people. Those words followed me long after he left. Emily still loved me. I believe that. She hugged me before leaving every morning. She remembered my coffee order. Sometimes she apologized for being busy. But apologies slowly replaced presence. Promises replaced time. Texts replaced conversations. I started measuring our relationship through phone notifications. Most stayed unread. Sometimes hours passed. Sometimes days. I would type long messages. Delete half of them. Send something simple instead. Hope your meeting goes well. Love you. No reply. The little delivered under the message became strangely painful. Then our engagement party arrived. Friends filled the restaurant. Family members laughed. Music floated through the room. I thought maybe tonight will be different. Maybe tonight we'd remember why we chose each other. Emily stood to make a toast. She looked beautiful, confident, successful, almost untouchable. I want to thank everyone for supporting us. Everyone cheered. She smiled toward Ryan's table before continuing. My career has opened incredible opportunities. Another round of applause. So, we've decided to postpone the wedding. The room grew quiet for only a heartbeat. I believe some dreams matter more right now. People nodded. Someone even clapped. Then everyone joined in. I couldn't move. We decided. Nobody had asked me. Nobody had warned me. I searched Emily's face, hoping she'd look back. She kept smiling at the crowd. Ryan raised his glass toward her. She returned the gesture. My pocket suddenly felt heavy. The ring box was still there. I had planned to surprise her by having our engagement ring professionally cleaned before tonight. Instead, I held it like a reminder of someone I barely recognized. The celebration lasted another hour. People congratulated Emily. They praised her ambition. They told me how lucky I was to have such a successful fiancé. I thanked them, smiled, shook hands, played the role everyone expected. Inside, something had already broken. The apartment welcomed us with complete silence. Emily kicked off her heels. I know tonight surprised you. I waited. She kept scrolling through congratulatory messages on her phone. This promotion changes everything. What about us? She finally looked up. This is for us. Then why did I hear about our postponed wedding with everyone else? Her lips parted, but nothing came out. A vibration interrupted the moment. Ryan's name flashed across her screen. She answered immediately and walked toward the balcony. I watched the glass door close behind her. She laughed at something he said. I couldn't remember the last time she laughed like that with me. When she finally returned, I was already in the bedroom. The ring rested inside its small wooden box. I placed it on her nightstand. Not hidden, not dramatic, just impossible to miss. Before sunrise, I zipped my only suitcase. The apartment stayed quiet. Emily never heard the front door close. I walked away carrying everything that still belonged to me. The ring stayed behind. The apartment echoed every time I took a step. One bedroom, one worn-out couch, one tiny kitchen with a window facing another brick building. It wasn't the life I had imagined after getting engaged. Still, when I placed my suitcase beside the wall, something inside me whispered that this empty place belonged to me more than the beautiful apartment I had left behind. My phone buzzed before I even unpacked. Emily calling. The screen stayed bright for a few seconds. Then it went dark. A message arrived almost immediately. Where are you? Another one followed. Can we talk? My thumb hovered over the keyboard. 100 replies crossed my mind. None of them mattered anymore. The phone slipped back into my pocket. The room became quiet again. The first week felt longer than the whole year before it. Every morning, I reached toward the other side of the bed before remembering nobody was there. Every evening, I caught myself checking the clock around 6. That had been the time I usually started dinner. Now I made simple meals for one. No candles, no waiting, no cold plates sitting on the table until midnight. It hurt more than I wanted to admit, but at least the food stayed warm. Daniel showed up carrying 2 paper bags full of groceries. You bought instant noodles again, didn't you? I smiled. They're cheap. They're terrible. He placed fresh bread, eggs, coffee, and fruit on the counter. You can't rebuild your life on noodles. I'm trying. I know. He leaned against the kitchen sink. So, do you miss her, or do you miss the idea of her? The question landed harder than I expected. I opened the refrigerator just to avoid answering. After a long pause, I admitted the truth. I don't know anymore. Daniel nodded slowly. That's an honest place to start. Work became my safest place. Nobody there knew about my broken engagement. Nobody looked at me with pity. I simply arrived, finished my projects, and went home. One afternoon, my supervisor stopped beside my desk. Claire Bennett always spoke calmly, even when everyone else rushed around the office. I've been reviewing your reports. I waited, expecting criticism. Instead, she smiled. These are excellent. Thank you. You've turned down 2 promotions during the past year. I had personal reasons. I guess that. She placed another folder in front of me. A management position opens next month. I almost answered without thinking. I can't relocate. The words escaped automatically. Then I remembered. Nothing was holding me in place anymore. Claire noticed the hesitation. You don't have to answer today. She walked away. The folder stayed on my desk for the rest of the afternoon. Emily kept reaching out. Morning texts, late-night calls, voice messages, sometimes only one sentence. Please come home. Other times they stretched into long paragraphs. We can fix this. You're overreacting. This isn't how couples solve problems. The messages changed every few days. Confusion became frustration. Frustration became worry. I read most of them. I answered none. One rainy evening, I opened our old conversation. Thousands of messages filled the screen. Vacation plans, wedding ideas, heart emojis, pictures of apartments, promises, dreams. The last message I'd sent stayed unread. Hope your meeting goes well. Love you. Hours later, she had announced our postponed wedding. That single message felt like the ending of everything. My finger rested over her name. A small menu appeared. Delete contact. The screen waited. One tap. Her photo disappeared. Only her phone number remained. It seemed like such a small thing. Yet my breathing grew heavier. Deleting a contact couldn't erase memories. But it reminded me that I didn't have to keep reaching for someone who had already let go. A week later, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. Gabe. Emily. You deleted me. I deleted a contact. That's worse. Her voice sounded tired. I've been to the apartment every day. I'm not there. I know that now. The line stayed quiet for a moment. Come home. I don't think that's my home anymore. You left without giving me a chance. I spent months giving chances. Another pause. I was trying to build our future. I kept waiting inside a future where I barely existed. She started speaking again, then stopped. Neither of us knew how to cross the distance between us. I'll find you. The call ended before I could answer. Claire called me into her office the next morning. The promotion is still available. She slid the paperwork across the desk. It's in Portland, over 800 miles away. A different city, a different beginning. You be leading your own team. I've never managed people. I know. She folded her hands. I've also never seen someone solve problems the way you do. I stared through the office window. Months ago, I would have refused immediately. Emily didn't want to leave the city. Every decision had revolved around her career. Mine always came second. Claire waited patiently. Finally, I signed the papers. I'll take it. She smiled. I think you're making the right choice. Walking out of her office, I realized something strange. Nobody had made the decision for me. This one belonged entirely to me. The apartment slowly filled with cardboard boxes. Books disappeared into cartons. Kitchen dishes followed. My clothes folded into suitcases. The empty shelves reminded me how little I truly owned. Every packed box felt like another promise to myself. Keep moving. Don't turn around. A knock echoed through the apartment one Saturday afternoon. I opened the door. Emily stood in the hallway. She wore the same blue coat I had given her the previous Christmas. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes. For a second, neither of us moved. Then her gaze drifted past me. The stacked boxes, the wrapped furniture, the shipping labels. What is all this? I'm moving. She blinked. No. I accepted a promotion. Where? Portland. The colors slowly disappeared from her face. You're serious. I am. I thought you just needed time. I did. She stepped inside without waiting for permission. This isn't you. My hand rested against one of the boxes. I think this is exactly me. She walked from room to room. Every space looked emptier than the last. You packed everything. There wasn't much left. Her fingers brushed the edge of the kitchen counter. The coffee machine is gone. I donated it. The pictures. I packed the ones that belonged to me. She turned toward me. What about us? The question floated between us. There hasn't been an us for a while. You don't mean that. I do. Her breathing became uneven. We were engaged. We were. I still love you. The words hurt more than I expected. Not because I believed they were false. Because they arrived after months of choosing everything else first. You loved me when it was convenient. A tear slipped down her cheek. I made mistakes. So did I. She waited. My mistake was believing patience could replace partnership. Emily reached toward my hand. My fingers stayed at my side. She let hers fall back slowly. I don't know who you are anymore. I finally do. Evening settled outside the windows. She walked toward the door without another argument. Her shoulders looked smaller somehow. Before leaving, she glanced around the apartment one last time. I never thought you'd actually leave. I know. The door closed softly. Her footsteps faded down the hallway. I picked up my apartment key, turned it once in my hand, then placed it on the kitchen counter for the landlord. Nothing else connected me to this city now. The train station buzzed with early morning travelers. Families hugged. Children laughed. Announcements echoed through the building. Daniel pulled me into a quick embrace. Call me when you get there. I will. You've got this. I hope so. You don't need hope anymore. He smiled. You've already started. The train doors opened. I climbed aboard with my suitcase. As the engine rumbled to life, movement outside caught my attention. Emily. She stood on the platform, searching every window. Her eyes finally found mine. She lifted one trembling hand. Her lips formed my name. I stayed in my seat. The window remained closed. A few seconds later, the station disappeared behind us. The city welcomed me without asking about my past. Nobody here knew I had left an engagement behind. Nobody knew how many nights I had waited beside cold dinners or how many promises had quietly disappeared. The train ride had ended weeks ago, but part of me still expected my phone to light up with Emily's name. It never did. Or maybe it did. I had stopped checking the blocked messages. Every morning, I chose coffee instead of memories. Every evening, I chose sleep instead of wondering what she was doing. The choices were small. Together, they began changing me. My first day as a team manager felt strange. People gathered around the conference table, waiting for instructions. Not long ago, I had spent most of my energy making sure someone else succeeded. Now people looked to me. Claire walked into the room, carrying a folder. Nervous? A little. Good. That answer surprised me. She smiled. It means you care. The meeting lasted an hour. Nobody questioned my ideas. Nobody ignored my voice. Walking back to my office, I caught my reflection in the glass wall. The man staring back looked tired, but he also looked taller somehow. Not because life had become easier, because I had finally stopped apologizing for taking up space. Claire knocked on my office door one afternoon. Lunch. I brought food. She glanced toward the sandwich sitting beside my keyboard. You call that lunch? It's efficient. It's depressing. 20 minutes later, we sat outside a small cafe. The breeze carried the smell of fresh bread. People laughed around us. For once, I wasn't checking my phone every few minutes. Claire noticed. You stopped looking over your shoulder. I didn't realize I was. You used to. She stirred her coffee. Whatever happened before you came here? Her sentence faded. You don't have to tell me. I appreciate that. You'll talk when you're ready. No pressure. No curiosity pretending to be kindness. Just respect. I hadn't realized how much I needed that. Work filled my days. Running filled my mornings. Books filled my evenings. The apartment slowly became a home instead of a place to sleep. One Saturday, I bought a simple wooden bookshelf. Putting it together took 3 hours because I kept attaching the pieces backward. When I finally finished, I laughed out loud. Nobody heard me. Still, it felt good. The laughter belonged to me. Daniel called every Sunday. How's the big manager? Still pretending I know what I'm doing. You've always known. I just didn't believe it. He grew quiet. Any news from Emily? I don't ask. Good. What about back home? His sigh answered before the words came. Things aren't going well. I leaned back in my chair. What happened? Ryan's company lost a major client. I didn't know. Neither did Emily until it was too late. I listened without interrupting. She tied her biggest project to him. And the project failed. The room felt strangely still. Not because I enjoyed hearing it, because life had started moving without waiting for either of us. A few days later, another surprise arrived. An email from an old coworker. I thought you should know. Emily resigned today. Only one sentence. Nothing else. I closed the laptop. Months ago, I would have rushed to call her. Now I simply sat beside the window watching the rain. Some storms had to pass without me. Back in our old apartment, memories had begun speaking louder than people. At least that was what Daniel later told me. Emily stayed there alone after leaving her job. Ryan had disappeared almost overnight. The man who once called her every hour suddenly stopped answering. The expensive dinners, the promises, the endless confidence, gone. She had traded a relationship that stayed through ordinary days for someone who only stayed while things were easy. Daniel visited her one evening. He told me about it during our next phone call. I almost didn't recognize the place. What do you mean? The apartment feels empty. It always had too much furniture. I'm not talking about furniture. His voice softened. Your closet. I pictured it without meaning to. The left side had always been mine. Shirts arranged by color. Running shoes underneath. A small shelf holding old notebooks. Now it stood empty. I guess she finally noticed. She stood there for a long time. He paused. She kept touching the hangers. Another week passed. I stayed busy. Life kept asking me to look ahead instead of behind. Then my phone rang. Daniel again. You left more behind than clothes. What now? Emily found a box. My stomach tightened. What box? The one from the hallway closet. I remembered immediately. Old papers, receipts, birthday cards, letters I had never shown anyone. I forgot about it. She opened everything. I closed my eyes. Inside that box lived years of quiet choices. Electric bills I had secretly paid after her company delayed bonuses. Medical receipts from when she caught pneumonia. Lists of expenses I covered because I never wanted her to worry. Handwritten reminders about anniversaries with her parents. Favorite flowers. Her mother's birthday. Her father's medication schedule. Tiny details I had memorized because they mattered to her. None of them had ever felt important enough to mention. Daniel continued. There were letters, too. I never planned for anyone to read those. She did. The words settled between us. How did she react? I've never seen someone cry like that. I rested my forehead against the apartment window. Outside, children rode bicycles along the sidewalk. Life continued as if nothing had changed. Maybe that was the lesson. The world didn't stop for broken hearts. That night, I opened my own desk drawer. One photograph remained. Emily and I stood beside the river on the night of our engagement. Our smiles looked effortless. I studied the picture for several minutes. Then I removed it from the frame. Not because I hated the memory, because it belonged to another version of my life. The empty frame stayed on the shelf. The photograph disappeared into a drawer. Some memories deserved respect. They didn't deserve control. The next Sunday brought another phone call. You won't believe what happened. Daniel sounded exhausted. What is it? She found your wedding planner. I laughed quietly. I thought that notebook was lost. It wasn't. Images flooded back into my mind. Guest lists, travel plans, dreams written across dozens of pages. I had bought that notebook the week after proposing. Every spare moment, I added new ideas. Places she wanted to visit, songs she loved, recipes from her grandmother. The wedding wasn't just one day. It was supposed to be the beginning of every day after that. Daniel spoke carefully. She almost didn't open it. Why? She thought it would hurt too much. And then, the first page stopped her. I remembered exactly what I had written years ago. Not because I had read it often, because I had written every word with complete certainty. Daniel read it slowly over the phone. Emily, his voice paused. No matter how busy life becomes, no matter how hard things get, I'll always choose us. Another pause. I hope we never forget that love is built through the small moments nobody else sees. I cover my eyes. The final line arrived like an echo from another lifetime. No matter what happens, I'll always choose us. Daniel's voice became almost a whisper. She closed the notebook. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, he added one last sentence. I think she realized something. I already knew what it was. I had always chosen us. She never truly had. The wedding invitation stayed on my kitchen table for almost a week. Daniel had called the same night it arrived. You're coming. That sounds less like an invitation. It is. What if I'm busy? You're not. I laughed. You seem very confident. I've known you for 15 years. His voice softened. I want my best friend standing beside me. There was never really a choice. I'll be there. When the call ended, I stared at the invitation again. Returning home meant returning to the place where everything had fallen apart. This time, I wasn't going back to fix anything. I was simply going back. The church looked exactly the way I remembered. White flowers lined the entrance. Soft music floated through the air. Friends greeted me with warm smiles. Nobody spoke about my broken engagement. Nobody treated me like a man carrying old scars. Daniel adjusted his tie while studying me in the mirror. "You've changed. I've gotten older." "No." He shook his head. "You finally look like someone who believes in himself." I smiled without answering. Maybe he was right. The ceremony ended with applause. Guests gathered outside beneath the afternoon sun. People laughed while photographers hurried everyone into position. I had just stepped away from the crowd when I heard my name. "Gabe." The voice stopped me before I turned around. Emily stood a few steps away. For a moment, I barely recognized her. The expensive confidence she once carried had disappeared. Her clothes were elegant, but simple. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes. She held her purse with both hands as though she needed something to steady herself. "You look well." "Thank you." A small smile appeared. "It's good to see you." I nodded politely. "You too." Neither of us moved. The silence between us felt different now. Not angry, just heavy with everything that had never been finished. "I know today isn't the right time." She took a slow breath. "But could you give me one chance?" "To do what?" "To explain." I glanced toward the wedding guests, then back at her. "One conversation. That's all." After a long pause, I agreed. "One conversation." We met the next morning at a quiet coffee shop near the river where I had once proposed. The place hadn't changed. Only the people inside it had. Emily wrapped both hands around a cup she barely touched. I practiced this speech for weeks. "You don't need a speech. That's the problem." A weak smile crossed her face. "I finally understand that." She stared through the window before speaking again. "When Ryan offered bigger projects, I thought I had to prove myself." "I know." I kept believing one more promotion would make everything easier. Her fingers tightened around the cup. Every success made me chase another one. "You forgot what you already had." She closed her eyes. I did. There were no excuses in her voice. Only honesty. "I thought you would always wait." "That was unfair." "I know." Another pause settled between us. "I confused your patience with permission." Those words stayed with me. She had finally named the mistake that neither of us could explain before. Over the next few days, we met twice more. Not because I wanted to reopen old wounds. Because some endings deserved honesty. One evening we walked through the city park. Leaves drifted across the path between us. "My parents blamed you at first." Emily watched a child fly a kite nearby. "Then they found your letters." I remember the box. My mother cried after reading them. She always liked handwritten notes. She told me something I couldn't answer. Emily swallowed carefully. She asked why the man who remembered everyone's birthdays had to remind his own fiancée to come home for dinner. Neither of us spoke after that. There wasn't anything left to defend. The truth slowly came out piece by piece. Ryan had promised partnerships, bonuses, leadership. When the company started losing money, he protected himself first. Emily became the easiest person to blame. He stopped returning my calls. She laughed quietly. "It happened faster than I expected." "You trusted him." "I trusted ambition." The wind lifted a strand of her hair. "I should have trusted love." I believed she meant every word. That didn't erase the past. It simply explained it. The night before Daniel's reception, Emily stopped beside her car before leaving. "One question." I waited. "Have you forgiven me?" The answer came easier than I expected. "Yes." Relief flashed across her face. Then I continued. "Forgiveness isn't the same as going back." The relief faded. She nodded slowly. "I understand." Whether she truly did, I couldn't tell. The wedding reception filled a large ballroom with music and laughter. Daniel danced with his new wife. Friends crowded around the dance floor. For the first time in years, weddings no longer reminded me of what I had lost. Instead, they reminded me of what love should feel like. Chosen, shared, mutual. Clara traveled from Portland for the celebration. She congratulated Daniel before finding me near the refreshment table. "So this is your hometown." It looks smaller than I remembered. "That's usually what happens." She smiled. "Not because the town changes. Because we do." Before I could answer, movement across the room caught my attention. Emily had stepped onto the small stage. The music faded. Conversation slowed. She held a microphone with unsteady hands. I know this isn't my celebration. Her voice trembled. But I need a few minutes. People exchanged confused glances. Daniel looked toward me. I gave him a small nod. Emily wasn't here to ruin his day. She was here to finish ours. She climbed down from the stage and walked directly toward me. Every step seemed harder than the one before. The room grew quieter. No dramatic tears. No desperate shouting. Only hundreds of eyes following her. She stopped an arm's length away. I spent months trying to understand where everything went wrong. Her hand reached in her purse. I blamed work. A small velvet box appeared. I blamed Ryan. She opened it. The engagement ring rested exactly where I had left it. I blamed bad timing. Her breathing became uneven. Then I realized the truth. She lifted the ring carefully. I stopped choosing the man who chose me every single day. The room disappeared around us. Only her voice remained. I can't change what I did. She lowered herself onto one knee. Gasps spread through the guests. Daniel covered his mouth. Claire stood perfectly still. Emily looked up at me. Not with confidence. Not with pride. Only hope. This ring never stopped belonging to my heart. A tear rolled down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. I know I don't deserve another chance. Her fingers trembled as she held the ring toward me. But if love can survive honesty, she drew one careful breath. Will you marry me? The ring caught the light exactly as it had the night I first placed it on her finger. My eyes rested on it, then on the woman kneeling before me. My hand stayed at my sides. I didn't reach for the ring. I didn't speak. I simply stood there, and my silence became the only answer anyone in the room could hear. Emily's hand trembled beneath the weight of the ring. The ballroom had become so quiet that I could hear my own breathing. Nobody reached for a drink. Nobody whispered. Even the music had stopped. Hundreds of eyes waited for one answer. Mine never came. Instead, I stepped closer. Very carefully, I wrapped my fingers around hers. The diamond disappeared as I gently folded her hand closed. She searched my face. Not for anger. Not for punishment. Only for hope. A tear slipped down her cheek. She understood before I spoke a single word. The ring belonged with her now. Not because we still had a future. Because that chapter of my life had finally come to an end. Emily lowered her head. The hand holding the ring rested against her heart. She slowly stood. No one clapped. No one interrupted. The room understood that some moments deserved respect instead of noise. Daniel quietly walked toward the band. Soft music returned. Conversations slowly started again. The wedding continued. Life continued. And somehow, so did we. I slipped outside onto the empty balcony. The cool night air settled across my face. City lights stretched into the distance. A few minutes later, the balcony door opened. Emily stepped outside. She didn't come close immediately. She stood several feet away, giving me space. I always wondered what you would do if this moment ever happened. A sad smile crossed my face. I never imagined it would. I did. She stared down at the closed ring box in her hand. I just thought the ending would be different. The breeze lifted a few strands of her hair. I've spent months preparing speeches. I could tell. A quiet laugh escaped her. They all sounded perfect in my apartment. And now, they don't matter. She leaned against the railing. The truth is much smaller. I waited. I loved you. Another pause. I simply stopped acting like it. There was nothing to argue with. Nothing to defend. She had already done the hardest part. She had faced herself. I need you to know something. She looked toward me again. I never left because you chased your career. Confusion crossed her face. I left because every time life forced you to choose. My words slowed. You stopped choosing us. She closed her eyes. I know. I would have supported every dream you had. I know. I already was. Her shoulders dropped. I just never noticed. No. You noticed. She frowned slightly. You simply believed I'd always be waiting at the finish line. A tear reached the corner of her smile. I treated your loyalty like something that couldn't disappear. You treated it like it didn't need protecting. She nodded. I did. The honesty hurt. It also healed. Emily opened the small ring box one last time. The diamond caught the moonlight. I carried this every day after you left. Her thumb brushed across the silver band. I kept believing there would be another chance. There usually isn't. I've learned that. She closed the box again. My mother told me something after she finished reading your letters. What did she say? Emily laughed softly through watery eyes. She looked at me and asked. Her voice almost disappeared. Why did you spend so much time chasing the future that you ignored the man building one beside you? Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Some questions never needed answers. She reached into her purse again. My phone. I glanced at it. I never deleted your number. She unlocked the screen. The last message you sent me. My heart already knew which one she meant. She turned the display toward me. Hope your meeting goes well. Love you. I read it too late. I know. I've never answered it. You don't have to. She looked at the message one final time, then locked the phone. I think I'll leave it exactly the way it is. Why? So I never forget the moment I answered work instead of love. The phone disappeared back in her purse. That unread message had become more than a forgotten text. It had become a lesson. Daniel found us a few minutes later. He smiled carefully. I didn't want to interrupt. You aren't. He rested a hand on my shoulder. The photographer wants one last picture with everyone. Emily stepped back. I should go. Before turning away, she faced me once more. Thank you. For what? For loving me the way you did. She took a slow breath. I didn't deserve it. I shook my head gently. Love isn't something people earn. She listened quietly. But keeping it. My voice softened. That part takes two people. She nodded once. This time there were no promises. No requests. No desperate hope. Only acceptance. She walked back into the ballroom, carrying the ring that had once belonged to our future. Now it belonged to her memories. The next morning, I boarded my flight home. As the plane climbed above the clouds, I rested my head against the window. For the first time in years, my future felt open instead of uncertain. Not because everything was perfect, because I finally trusted myself. Months passed. Work continued growing. Claire became one of my closest friends. She challenged me when I doubted myself, celebrated every success without making it a competition. One evening, we finished a long meeting and walked toward the parking lot. You seem lighter. I am. Took you long enough. I laughed. It did. She unlocked her car. So what's next? I looked toward the sunset. I don't know. She smiled. That's not a bad answer. No, it isn't. For once, not knowing didn't scare me. It excited me. Life slowly filled with ordinary moments. Weekend hikes. Phone calls with Daniel. New neighbors who became friends. Books left open on rainy afternoons. Coffee that never grew cold while waiting for someone else. The happiness wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Peace rarely announced itself. It simply arrived one quiet day and decided to stay. One early morning I woke before sunrise. The balcony outside my apartment overlooked the river. The sky slowly changed from dark blue to gold. A warm cup of coffee rested in my hands. My phone vibrated once. Unknown number. One unread message. I didn't open it. Some doors stayed closed for a reason. The screen went dark again. The sunrise kept climbing higher. I smiled without forcing it. Not because someone had finally realized my value. Not because regret had found the person who hurt me. Those things no longer control my happiness. The greatest victory had nothing to do with watching Emily lose me. It came from learning that my worth had never depended on being chosen by someone else. Years ago, I believed love meant waiting no matter how much it hurt. Now I understood something far more important. Real love never asks one person to disappear so the other can shine. It grows because both people keep choosing each other, especially when life becomes difficult. Emily finally understood that truth. I finally lived it. She proposed again after our engagement ended. My silence looked like rejection to everyone else. To me, it was the first time my heart and my self-respect finally agreed.